Demon fans, and welcome back to the Demonland podcast. My name is Andy, and the Demons have made it 3 on the trot after comfortably dispatching the hapless Eagles at our home away from home Optus Stadium. Now the question is, can we finally claim a big scalp as we set our sights on the high-flying Hawks? Joining me tonight to analyse a clinical win out west is George. Good evening, George.
Good evening, Andy. Good evening, Binman. Good evening to all our faithful listeners. Well, that was a truly emphatic win on Saturday, and the Melbourne Football Club also apparently notched up a third win as well on the same night. So wins all round.
Well, it depends who you're going for there.
Got the what is it, the double?
The Quinella. Also joining us tonight.
I got the trifecta. Sorry, Andy.
Well, I'll introduce you first. This man seems to be walking on air. He's busting to get out of the gate. It's B-Man. Good evening, B-Man.
Good evening, Andy. Good evening, George. Good evening, Demonlanders. And yeah, I got the trifecta. A Labor win, Dutton loses his seat, and the Mighty D's get up. But depending on who you are barring for, obviously.
Well, I was very happy that the Greens lost as well.
Right, that's good. Happy all round.
Did I just hear Andy say he was happy?
Yeah. Well, not with the football.
All right. Yeah, okay.
Were you happy at halftime, Andy?
I think some of the no, I want to tell you the truth, only because of I was happy with the way we were playing for most of the first half. Forget those last 4 goals. I was very frustrated, obviously, but I was also frustrated with our inability to capitalise on the good footy that we were playing, which has been all year round. The last couple of years has been our Achilles heel. So, and I've always said that's going to cost us games, and well,
it was similar. I thought it was really similar vibe to the Tigers game, because even though when I watched the replay, the commentators in the Tigers game weren't really noting this, but at the ground, I always felt we're in control of the Tigers game. Now, in this game, I wasn't at the ground. I didn't watch it till quite late as live. But it felt, watching it, we were in total control in that first half. Until they put and I'll talk about this in a sec, they really turned the wick up with their pressure. It was really noticeable in that second. And, it really showed what happens when, that burst for about 15 minutes where they really went full pressure, made it difficult for us. And, we did pretty well conversely to hold them at that stage as well. So, yeah, it always felt like we're in control, except for that sort of 10-minute burst where they turned up the wick a little bit. But yeah, super impressive second half, I thought.
But it felt like they could have really got control of the game, and we're lucky that it's West Coast and we were able to get back.
I don't know. I've watched the replay 2.5 times now, and one of the things that, even though their expected score was just slightly over the actual score, it's worth noting that in that run, they got some pretty spectacular goals. Hunt kicks one from the boundary with a 45-metre banana. There was another one from a young fella who marked running onto the ball, who kicked from a tight angle on the opposite side with his right foot on the wrong side for a right footer. And then I think was a Waterman who got a sort of really good goal as well. And so there was some of their goals were, and then late in the last quarter, they got one just booted off the ground. So I thought it was interesting that Gawn said, "Do you see the interview with him after the game on the ground?"
I did hear about it.
He asked what the score was to Schofield. And I know there's a question about Schofield. What an average commentator.
It wasn't just him; it was the whole commentary team. But we'll talk about it.
Totally. But there was a really interesting reveal. He asked the score and basically said that they were aiming to keep them under 75 or 75 or under. So I wonder whether that's the new benchmark. It was 60, remember, in 2021. So the 15 points is the extra for the new style of play. So if that was their goal, they only just failed to meet that goal.
Mm. All right, well, we'll get more into it in a moment, but first we'll do some housekeeping each week. I do ask our loyal listeners to support the podcast by leaving us a 5-star review and a comment on Apple Podcasts, and we truly appreciate the feedback. And as a token of our gratitude, we give a well-deserved shout-out to those who do take the time to share their reviews. And Lost in Manila writes, I moved to the Philippines 6 years ago, and the only thing that keeps me sane while navigating Manila traffic is listening to the Demonland podcast, hearing the breakdown of games with insight, honesty, and just the right amount of passionate frustration helps me stay connected with home and the club that I love. Salamat, lads. Well, thank you for that great review, Lost in Manila.
It's pretty damning, isn't it, that somebody comes onto this podcast to be sane.
Whilst in traffic, yes.
Yeah.
It's a bad start barracking for Melbourne.
Had quite a few expats write in lately, and it's good. I really like it when we get that, so keep that coming. Keep that feedback coming and leave us a 5-star review and a comment on Apple Podcasts, and we will give you that shout out on the show. If you follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, you want to leave feedback, ask a question, share a comment for the show, you can do that under our weekly podcast post or just slide into our DMs. You can also download and listen to the Demonland podcast on Apple, Google, Spotify, or any of your favorite podcasting apps. And you can also watch and listen to us on YouTube. Just search for Demonland Podcast and you'll find our channel. And don't forget to subscribe. If you want to connect with other passionate D's fans and you haven't checked out our forum, head on over to demonland.com, sign up, join in the conversation with fellow D's supporters from across Australia and around the world. I've heard from a few in the last couple of weeks. It's completely free. And in addition to posting questions and comments for the show, like we've got later, you'll find endless discussions on all things Melbourne Demons. If you want to jump on the air tonight and have your say on any of the topics that we're going to be talking about, give us a call on 039 016 3666. That's 039 016 3666. I'll answer, I'll put you on mute, and I'll bring you in when B-Man stops talking. You can also call that number anytime during the week.
There's a drive-by, Andy.
And we'll play it out on the show. The chat room is back in action. So if you're listening live, you can come join us in the chat room, demonland.com/podcast, and be a part of the conversation in real time. We go live every Monday night at 8 p.m. So if you want to catch the show as it happens, head on over to demonland.com and tune in. And just another piece of housekeeping, later in the week, I'm going to be interviewing Harvey Langford, young Demon rookie star, pick number 6 in the national draft. So, look out for that later in the week. Should be exciting.
That's a good get, Andy.
Yeah, it is. Really happy with that one. So, hear what the young lad has to say.
See what he thinks about his Demonland nickname, the Bison.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, I don't know whether I should ask that or not. He might not like it. At least it's not face-to-face. Don't want to get on the wrong side of the bison.
No, you don't want to be run over by a bison.
No, definitely not. Let's get into, we'll talk about Harvey Langford a bit later on. Let's get into the match overview. Melbourne captain Max Gawn turned in a ruck performance for the ages to lift his side to their 3rd consecutive victory, overwhelming a brave but ultimately outclassed West Coast Eagles by 32 points on Saturday night in Perth. It was billed as an election night clash, but only one vote, we'll make that 3, really mattered, and that was the undisputed 3 votes for Gawn, who delivered a career-best outing. He amassed a staggering 35 disposals, 22 contested, 47 hitouts, 12 score involvements, 9 clearances, and finally broke his 2025 goal drought in the last quarter. Thought he was going to miss that one. His 3rd term alone, 14 disposals, 10 contested, 4 clearances, 4 marks. It was just the stuff of legends, and he ripped the contest away from the Eagles, who had remarkably led by, I think, 12 points early in the second half. And it was a turnaround born out of a midfield dominance, with the Demons finishing with a plus 22 clearance differential, their best return since, I think it says here 2002, but I think it's 2022. But anyway, they established some territorial control from the outset. Yet true to form, Melbourne's wastefulness in front of goal kept the contest closer than it should have been for much of the first half. Despite winning the first 10 clearances and leading the inside 50 count 24-10 at one stage, the D's trailed by a goal at halftime after coughing up 4 late majors to an energised West Coast who capitalised on turnovers and loose defending. But the third term belonged entirely to the Demons, with Gawn's dominance giving Melbourne's engine room first use. Christian Petrarca, 29 disposals, 8 clearances, and Jack Viney, 18 disposals, 7 clearances, 10 tackles, and a goal were instrumental. And Viney also held 2024 D's tormentor Harley Reid to just 14 touches in a superb shutdown role. With Clayton Oliver rested, the D's were forced to turn to emerging midfielders and found answers. Harvey Langford, 25 disposals, 5 clearances, and Caleb Windsor, 20 touches, 5 inside 50s and a goal, stepped up with poise and dash. Cozzy Prickett brought bursts of energy at centre bounces, while Xavier Lindsay and Colton Tolstra showed glimpses of potential. And down forward, Daniel Turner was a revelation, thrust into a key forward role following Harrison Petty's concussion. Turner provided the aerial presence Melbourne had lacked, finishing with 3 goals, all in the second half, and presenting as a genuine option moving forward. Kay Chandler, 1 goal, continued his 2025 breakout, applying relentless forward pressure and collecting 26 disposals, while Bailey Fritsch and Ed Langdon added 2 goals apiece. And still, for all the midfield and ruck dominance, Simon Goodwin will likely be frustrated by the D's inconsistent ball use and a defence that leaks some easy goals in patches, with Jake Lever still weeks away and Petty to miss at least 1 game. Structural issues persist, but in a season where nothing has come easy, 3 wins on the trot and a captain at the peak of his powers will give the Demons belief heading into a pivotal clash with the Hawthorn Hawks next week. Big man, you want to get into your stats, Vals?
Indeed. Just before I do, just a comment on the selection. It was I was super surprised with the selection, not bringing JVR in for one. We got that wrong, but
particularly with no Casey game this week either.
But more from no surprise to drop Fuller. Less about. I mean, I thought he did everything to get a call up, but to not go in with a second ruck. And I reckon Goody was listening to the show last week when I joked that they'll probably this week just play him 100% of the time in the ruck for 100. You know, we almost did. He played the last 40 minutes of the game rucked.
I did. He did no one because that was because Petty was Turner rucked for a little bit.
He took one, I think. But for the last last quarter and the last 10 minutes, he rucked
90% game time.
Wow.
Yeah, I wasn't too far away.
So much for well, they weren't going to rest him after last week, particularly when Petty's off. And
that was we were really, really lucky with that because. Thank goodness we had Turner as well to go into the forward line because we had no tall forward.
After we lost.
So Max had to ruck for the whole game. Turner was lucky we had there.
And lucky McGovern went off as well.
And lucky McGovern went off, because I don't know what we would have done down the back line. That was sheer and utter luck that got that. But the problem was the selections. It was just ridiculous why we didn't have a second forward and a second ruck.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said on Demonland, it's, we don't have access to all of the information, so we're guessing to a degree. But, it was certainly baffling. I couldn't believe JVR wasn't selected. And, Melksham said – I could believe Melksham did because he – every team now runs with a defensive forward, and he's our defensive forward as much as he doesn't like the term. And I thought he was excellent.
He did not like that term.
No, he didn't like that term when you interviewed him. And but that's the role. He went straight to McGovern, and he was really influential. I thought so. I thought his selection was fair enough. And it's interesting the way they're playing Fritter. They've played Fritter the way where he plays his best footy is a deep forward, get him one-on-one and lead up, and maybe he's almost tall enough to play as the tall, and I wonder whether that was their thinking. They'll play him as the tall, given that they knew Oscar Allen was going to play back. So perhaps that was where the logic was, but it certainly came as a surprise to me that JVR didn't get the call up. It'll be fascinating to see what happens this week, particularly as you say, George, they didn't have a game. I didn't see anything on Demon. Did they have a practice game against Sandy?
Someone mentioned something about a game against Sandy, but I don't know. I haven't seen any. Obviously,
I didn't see anything on Demonland about the.
Unless someone was there, but yeah.
Yeah. So, curious. So, just kicking off with the player ratings and. Obviously number one, but not by much. So was Maxi Gawn, highest rated player on the ground. In terms of it was Gawn 24.1. Their highest rating player was Elijah Hewitt, who kicked 2 nice goals, one of them being off the ground, 21. I was really surprised in that. And their second highest was Oscar Allen, who had a better game than it appeared, but or at least what I thought watching the game on the replay. But so our top players were Max Gawn, unbelievable score in the third quarter, 11.1 of his 24.1 points. And any guesses for who was the second rated player?
I do actually know. I think it's Daniel Turner.
I could guess.
Yeah. Well, I didn't guess. I saw it somewhere.
Remarkable. So again, I've got to, and before I do this next time, I'm going to actually work out what people's highest scores are, because this is a guess, but I suspect that this is his highest score by a country mile. He had 24 points only. Remembering 20 is considered like an elite game of AFL footy, and all Australian level, and Gordy took 24.1. Daniel Turner, 24.
Do you know what his breakdown is? Because he took a lot of intercept marks, I think, in defence when he was down there. Well, not a lot, but
Daniel Turner's first quarter was 3.2 points, second quarter 3.4, and then he had a great third quarter, 8.0. And then his biggest quarter was the last quarter, 9.3. He was fantastic in that last quarter. I predicted him as my breakout player at the beginning of the year, and after getting dropped, I thought I was off track, but he's back on track, isn't he? So fantastic performance from him, and he's got a great kicking action. Like the goal he kicked from the boundary, speaking of goals from there, that was a terrific kick.
Well, where do we pull? Can I just jump in? I don't know. I think we're talking about the forward later, but where do we play him?
Well,
where we need him?
I think I really like him as a swingman. Like, he can play. I think Goody wants to be able to have some flexibility, and you've got two players, Petty and Turner, who are really like for like and can swap back and forward. And I'm always surprised a little bit that coaches don't use that more. Oh, well, Goody doesn't. Other coaches do a little bit, but it's sort of fallen out of fashion in the back in the day.
Yeah, because they've got struggles. They those defenders sort of learn how to play. So
within a system, that's right.
So it makes it hard. Unless you teach them both.
Systems. I mean, it depends a bit. It depends a bit on the conversation about JVR and who comes in at the forward line. I think so.
I'll talk later on.
Third on the list of player ratings, and this is I was thrilled with this. I just love watching him play. He also had a massive third quarter, 10.1 player points. Coming third, Caleb Windsor. His best game this season, one of his best games for the club. I think from memory, he had a pretty high rating game, a couple of them last year, but 16.5 is a pretty solid game of footy. And 10.1 of them were in the third quarter when we really came out firing and put the foot down. That was a terrific quarter of footy to watch. Track, who's been in great form, really, hasn't he? He came in fourth, 16.2 points. His first quarter was his best quarter. Ed Langdon, his first quarter was also his best quarter. He came in fourth, 11.9 points. And then I thought highlight Jake Melksham was our sixth highest rated player with 11.8. Down the bottom of the rating table, who do you reckon would be on the bottom? What's your tip for the bottom?
If Bailey Fritsch hadn't kicked 2 goals, I'd say that'd be him.
He was fourth bottom, so 4.9, and his best quarter was the first quarter.
Petty would be down there possibly because he went off.
Stephen May and Petty were just above Frida. Our lowest rated player with negative 1.7 was Colton Tolstrup, and I wrote on Demonland today that he's a lock, best 22 lock, and a Fat Tony poster said, well, his player ratings don't really reflect the best 22 lock, which is a fair call. Negative 1.7. And
but you know what? With Tolstrup, I think I've got it in my notes a bit later on, he was just almost there with a few things. He could have had 3 goals, I think, in the end. And that changes everything if he does.
Yeah, totally. Well, I mean, it's interesting. Dean Kilt asked last week why was Viney rated so low given the incredible pressure he put on. And it's interesting because that's probably a gap in the it's one of the weaknesses of the player ratings. It doesn't factor in pressure, so perceived pressure and all of that. And Colt was our third or fourth highest rated. So I'll have to look at it in a sec. I've got it here. Pressure player. So he put a lot of pressure on. He leads up to the ground. He's got good hands. I reckon that whole breakout game thing is a bit of a, it doesn't it's pretty rare, isn't it? But he strikes me as the sort of player who could have a big breakout game. He's clever. He leads up at the ball. He works hard and up and down the ground. And I just reckon that he's the sort of player that the best clubs, and I reckon Brisbane and Collingwood are the two best ones, where they have a honest comparative advantage is those medium forwards. I was watching Brisbane just play against the Suns, and it's Cameron, and even their mids kick goals, and Bailey, and they've just got a fall over themselves. How many of those medium forward players who can play on the ball and kick goals? And Colt's going to be one of those players for us. We haven't got enough of them, and I think he's. I can't see him going out of the side anytime soon.
No.
So
Colt strikes me, and particularly in this game, he was shown up a couple of times as a player who just quite hasn't got the pace of AFL.
Yeah,
he got caught badly holding the ball, I think, once, and he will learn the lesson, and that possession will turn into something seriously good in the future. But he's just that little. He's just adjusting to the pace of the game more than anything else. So,
yeah.
But yeah, he certainly puts in all the time, and that impresses me. You watch him standing on the mark. He's one of the few players who actually jumps and tries to attack the person kicking. I think he had 4 tackles in this game, which is a lot more than a lot of other players. He's trying all the time. So,
exactly.
That's what you can't want any more than that.
And that's why I reckon that he's like, maybe I wrote in response to, that's why I can't see him being dropped, because exactly right. He brings an energy that's just infectious. And I think that's one of the advantages of having all of these young players in the side, is they bring that energy. Just quickly on just above Colt on the bottom of that list of our player ratings was Tommy Sparrow and Jake Bowie, both of whom didn't have great player rating points, but I thought both of whom also put good pressure on and tackling, but it was Bowie's least effective game. So good. It was sort of a mixed bag, really. So I'm going to introduce another category of middling tonight, but good player ratings. Our top 5 player ratings was Jack Viney. Our top 4, I should say. Top 6. Viney, his season average is 49. He had 50. Kate Chandler, another high-pressure game. Geez, he's been terrific. I know there's a question about him. Track, and I really like this, is Track, his season average was 34.8 player points, 42 pressure points in this game. And I don't know whether it was Oliver not playing or maybe I'm overreading it, but he seemed like he was, I don't know, more. He showed a lot of leadership in this game, I thought, and he seemed really engaged in the game. Tolstrup was our 4th highest rated player in terms of pressure. He had 35 pressure points. His season average is 28.7. Then Spargs, Charlie Spargo, I thought had a really terrific game, and Jake Bowie. So another one was tackles inside 50, 17 to 5, so plus 12 again. I'll speak to that in a second in terms of how we look generally. So that was an excellent performance again. Goody came out a few weeks ago and said that was an area that we really want to focus on. And, it's really interesting, our game plan that's developing is there's a lag listening to the people on the commentators, because they're still, I think, overemphasizing that we're a clearance team and contest and pressure, which we definitely want to be, but we're also becoming quite a strong ball movement team. We're just not taking advantage of how effective we are. And I'll speak to some of those aggregate things in a sec. The fourth quarter was good. I thought it was terrific. Our pressure in that quarter was 191. Their pressure was really good too. They brought pretty good pressure, and I thought fought out the game pretty well. I was pretty happy that we ended up winning by 5+ goals, because it's worth noting that they kicked the first goal of the third quarter and went 12 points up. So from that point on, we ended up 7-goal turnaround. So 191 in that last quarter was an excellent effort, in the sense that it tells me that they ran through the line pretty well, and that they, big tick. Our first last quarter of the year that we've scored more than our opposition. So, 1 point, we'll take that. But the fact remains that we won that last quarter. And we won it with our rating of 191 pressure in that last quarter, which was our highest rating. So this was good. This is two sides of the coin. There's a good and the bad, but the good of it was that we scored 8 goals, 7, 55 from turnover. We did well to hurt them for turnover. As I said, before the weekend, we were the fourth best ball movement side from the defensive half to the forward half in the AFL. That was up from fifth the previous week. And I think that's really demonstrating that something that's, that's important for us to consider about what Goody's trying to do. He's really radically trying to, over last season and this season, changing the way we play from a forward half, get it into the forward half, trap it in, which have still all clubs want to do to an extent, but a much better ball movement side. Fourth best ball movement side, defensive half. In this game, defensive half, when we got possession in our back half to forward 50, 38.5% of the time we got it into our forward half. That was 11% more than them. So, again, we had a good ball movement game, and that was a bit the frustration in that first half, Andy, as you noted, not being able to turn that into scores, which has been our problem. Defensive half to score percentage, 17.3% of the time we get a chain out of the back half, defensive half being the centre line back to the opponent's goal. 17% we scored. I'm quite sure what the AFL average is, but it was 6.5% more than they did. It's worth noting too that not only were the fourth best ball movement in the AFL at the moment, that we're also, as I said, starting to bring up our clearance game as well, which those numbers for me aren't as impressive as what they kept on banging about on the coverage, but we'll talk about that in a sec. It's not about the number of clearances you get, it's about the scores and what you do with them, although territory is important with clearances. We scored 47 points in the third quarter. That was our highest scoring quarter since the start of 2022 season. So that's three and a bit seasons. That's our highest scoring quarter. That really surprised me when I saw that. So in terms of middling, our team pressure was middling. So it was, for the match, it was 173. We won that game being bested by 9. They were 182. It was impressive that we could dial it up to 191, but we're only 156 in that second quarter for a differential of 48 in that quarter. Their pressure was 204 in that quarter. In the second quarter, it gassed them. They could only come out and do 162, and we were plus 17 in the third quarter, plus 6 in the last. So we're plus 23 for the second half. And, of course, that's when we did the damage on the scoreboard. Goody would have been furious with minus 48 pressure in that second quarter, and it led them back into the game. That was really evident watching on the television. But, yeah, so the good second half, middling first half. Stoppages, middling as well. Like, it's a benefit to get as many stoppages as we did, but we only scored 12 more points from centre bounce. 4 goals, 125 to their goals, 2 goals, 113, and round the ground stoppages 22 to 13. So we were only plus 21 despite our dominance from raw total numbers of stoppages, and so Goody wouldn't have been thrilled with that, only plus 21 for. In terms of being able to take advantage of those clearances. Though, countering that is plus 55 on turnover, and they mentioned it on the commentary that, Simpson is actually quite good. It doesn't do his preparation, I don't reckon, at all. But some of his stuff's all right.
He relies too much on his knowledge of the other teams from when he was coach, but I feel that he doesn't do his homework to the here and now.
Yeah, I don't reckon he just rocks up and but he noted that they would be pretty happy that he's Simon, he kept on calling him, would be pretty happy with the scores from turnover, which is, they was all the talk in the last couple of seasons. It's all about ball movement at the moment, but scores from turnover, 70% of AFL scores are from turnover, and we had 55 points from turnover, 21 points from. So he was saying on the commentary that Simon would be pretty happy with that mix. Though I suspect Simon would have wanted a bit more scoring from our dominance. Though, again, not that they show this on television, it drives me nuts. I had no idea. You can't see the way they do it. There's a million. Put a man on the moon. They can't show it in match how effective, or the setups around the ball. But Simpson noted that they brought 2 extras to the stoppages around the ground. So that might explain why we were only +9 from stoppages. So in terms of bad, as I said, we were +23 for clearances, which normally be good. +8 we were 31 more clearances. 23 +8 from centre clearances, +13 from around the ground. We had first possession 27 times at clearances, yet could only turn that into +15 from score. And then the turnover as good. That's what I was saying before. The yin to that yang before was, we scored 55 points on turnover, but we gave up 44 points on turnover. What was their score in the end? 76. So over half of their score was from turnover. So only +11 in the end, but can't imagine Goody would be thrilled with +44 on turnover. Some of them are our mistakes, and I think that's the challenge with playing the way we want to play. You've got to get back hard on defence, don't you? Ugly, this one, and this explains why we didn't take advantage of our clearance domination, and these numbers would not have pleased Goody at all. Post-clearance contested possessions, we've killed it in the last 2 weeks for this stat. We were -14, 76-90 in this match. Post-clearance ground ball gets 48-58, so down 10 in those 2 important stats. So, that wouldn't have thrilled Goody. Just quickly at this stage of the season, there's, talking about how we're wanting to play, we're really we're really trying to change in front of our eyes, as again, I think it started last year, but I think a lot of, Goody should get a lot of credit for it. He's copped a lot of wax, but we are playing a different way than we have been. Some of our numbers sort of indicate that, as I said, 4th best ball movement team. One of the other things that Daniel Hoyne noted is that, I can't recall whether he said that this is compared to our stats, but we're one of the fastest. I think he might have said the fastest, don't quote me exactly, in the AFL at giving the ball off once we take a mark or a stoppage. So we give it off quicker than any other team in the AFL, and the quickest we have, significantly quicker than we have under Goody, which means that we're giving, we're really trying to get that ball in motion, which probably feeds into why we're 4th in the AFL from movement from our back half. We're number 1 in our differential for opponents tackled inside 50, which would, given where we started with that, would be super pleasing for Goody. We're first, this won't surprise anyone, first in least opponents per game, 3rd in marks per game, and that also speaks to the way we're trying to play. We're using uncontested possession and kick marks a lot when we want to control the tempo and move it around and stretch teams. And we're 3rd in tackles inside 50 per game, which be super pleasing to Goody, because we were down. I'm not sure where we were when he made that call for us. We need to improve, but we've been awesome in the last 3 weeks in that part of the game. So, it's interesting stats, and bring on Hawthorn.
With the inside 50s, the real disappointment, though, is that the tackles are being done by players who don't play in the forward line. That, in this game, for example, Fritsch had 0 tackles, Turner had 0 tackles, Spargo had 1. Who was the other one? Melcham had 3 out of how many tackles inside 50?
What was it? It was
17 tackles inside 50, and only 4 of them came from the forwards, who were supposed to be defensive forwards. The work's being done by others, unfortunately, and we've seen that.
Fritter's not going to. I mean, I guess we'll talk about Fritter at some stage. But if he kicks 2 goals a game, then But it's a vexed thing about bringing him back, isn't it? Because,
Yeah.
he kicks 2 goals a game and doesn't bring that pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's what his opponent does is usually the problem that didn't get exposed in this game because we're playing against the bottom of a ladder side that hasn't won a game, so it's not surprising.
But I think, though, it helps. Look, I personally think, they want to play him high half forward. He plays his best footy at full forward. Maybe that's where they'll play him. And then the opponent's at least, not able to run off him in the same way. But it was good to see him take those 2. He took 3 contested marks inside 50. He was the leading contested mark taker on the ground. So, it'd be interesting. I think Goody wants him in the side. I think we're fairly clear on that.
He's definitely one of his favourites, but he's not producing what he should be producing if we're serious about contending any time.
Yeah, it'll be interesting this week, won't it? I can't see him being dropped. I mean, I was wrong last week, so I'm not gonna call him dropped this week after 2 goals.
I doubt it.
Right.
Go on, George.
If Bin Man's calling, he's not going to be dropped. That's the best
best
possibility, isn't it?
Yeah, he might have to buy his train ticket to Casey this week.
Are Casey playing this week?
Well, they have to be. 2 buys in a row. I don't think so. But you never know with his VFL. All right, let's get into our listener questions. Max Gawn is the first one. We're going to talk about Dutch Demons ask, is it possible to clone Max Gawn? And Lazy says, we need to savour every game Max plays from now until he eventually hangs up the boots. Recency bias can be tricky, but where do you rank Max in Melbourne's history? Is there a realistic argument for him being the greatest D of all time, or is it top 3 more appropriate? For me, it's top 3. Barras has the glittering achievements. Flower was obviously the best in bad teams. Max is somewhere in the middle. Supreme Demon says Max Gawn needs to be in the conversation as one of the greatest Demon players ever, doesn't he? He was totally dominant against West Coast. And Spirit of Norm Smith says, Max Gawn, our legend, our hero, our leader, what a champion. And yes, what a champion he is. I reeled off his record-breaking stats in the match overview, but this game was so nice that I'm going to reel them off twice. He amassed a staggering 35 disposals, 22 contested, 47 hit-outs, 12 score involvements, 9 clearances, and kicked that goal. Broke his drought for the year. Incredible third term, the 14 disposals, 10 contested, 4 clearances, 4 marks. Just an incredible game and a ruck masterclass. George, what did you think of Max's game? And I'm not sure you're qualified to answer this, but is it possible to clone him?
I actually have the answer to that. He's already been cloned. George is on the way. Not this George, but his son George. All we've got to do is wait for 15 years or so until George is available for selection. So we have two options at that point. Either Max plays for another 15 years. I don't know that that's going to happen, but anyhow, or we just have to get one of those really big 3D printers to come out and start producing a new version of Max Gawn for us. This was a fantastic game, I think. For Bin Man, I think, and statistics, it was the highest fantasy score, whatever that means, because I don't follow any of that rubbish. But it was the highest fantasy score for 2025 for any player. So tells you, how much influence he had in this game. The concern is, it also sends a message to every other side in the competition. Stop Max and you stop Melbourne.
And I guarantee you, Sam Mitchell of Hawthorn knows exactly what he's going to do.
Yeah, and that's been the case for a long time, though, hasn't it? That it's not. You don't need to be really smart to know how good Max is and what a threat he is to oppositions. And they will target him in one way, shape, or form during the game. He's certainly one of the greatest in the history of the Melbourne Football Club. I mean, he was the captain of a team that won a premiership after 57 years. That's fantastic. And when you look at his record over that period of time, it's just been superb. When you go back to the early days of Max, the gangly kid that he was, and the stories of the Max Gawn yawn over Thomas Scully in years gone by. He's come a long way from that. And the other thing to remember is, when he stands amongst the greats for the Melbourne Football Club, Jimmy Stein's the other great ruckman we had. is he as good as Jimmy? I think he's getting to the point where he's actually a bit better than Jimmy, and Jimmy's got a statue outside the MCG. So we might need to get the bronze out and start melting it down to prepare for one for Max.
Yeah, for me, Robbie Flower is in a category by himself, so I'm not even going to, he's a standalone. I didn't see Barras play, so I can't comment on actually seeing him, so I can only go by what people say about Barras. But in terms of players that I have seen, he's the best Melbourne player I've seen. He's the most influential. I've said this for the last 4 or 5 years, so that's ever since I've been on the pod, is that there's no one in the whole time I barracked for Melbourne who is more important to on any given day to whether we win or lose. I would argue he's probably the most influential player in the AFL in terms of if you took him out of our side, how, I don't think maybe Nick Dacos at Collingwood, I can't think of anyone, if you took a single player out of any side, that would have the same impact if you took him out of our side. He's a Monty, isn't he, to get his 8th All-Australian this year.
Yeah, providing he doesn't get injured.
Yeah, providing he doesn't get injured. He's a walk-up Hall of Famer. I think it really shouldn't be lost or sort of in the conversation is that he does all of that where in the last 4, 5, 6 years, he's been the figurehead of the club. More than the coaching staff, more than the president, more than he fronts up at the media. He's, he had a funky interview a few weeks back and he's got a bit of stuff going on. And, even I commented on it was but he's out there carrying this, carrying the club through mainly bad times, tough times. He's a skipper of a premiership side. He's, the glue that's kept a lot of that, a group of young men together. The players love him. Coaches love him. He'll get he must be on top of the coaches award now. He got another 10 votes this week.
He's in equal third with about 10 players, but he's five off the lead. But considering we've lost 5 games, it's pretty good.
Yeah, and as good as his career has been, you could put a case together that he's had his best consecutive 3 games, of his career. Each one of them up above 20 points player ratings. It is phenomenal, that sort of consistency. And he's, in this match, the commentators noted a couple of times, but he's such a great role model. He runs hard. He he gave away a free kick.
And did you see him run back?
And he just bowled it. You just saw him sprint back.
Yeah.
He wanted to kick that goal so desperate and sprinted forward of the contest. I saw that footage on one of the shows and, he just wanted that. The opposition ruckman just didn't go with him. And he was one out in the forward line and I was so pleased that he went back and kicked it. So he's a dead set freak, and he's and I think forgetting like the best player for Melbourne, he's the best ruck I've seen. Full stop. Like Simon Madden was the best I'd seen. There's no way Simon Madden's record holds a candle to Maxi.
Dean, there was an article I think on the weekend. Dean Cox was matching him pretty well. But for both of them, they're just great players.
Cox probably. I didn't. Maybe it's the West. It's the West Coast thing, but probably Dean Cox and Madden. Yeah, that's a fair call.
If only Max could learn how to kick, he would definitely be the best. He's still doing the same rubbish.
He kicked a couple of nice ones to people on the run.
Oh, he hit Turner. The kick he hit to Turner was just absolute beautiful kick.
Every now and again he does it, but I was still screaming for someone to run past him for those shots of goal.
Yeah. I think you need to, as your sponsor, him, Andy, you need to have a word with him.
I wouldn't dare. I wouldn't dare. All right, let's get on to the next one. Travi14 writes, very happy with the kids. Windsor has it and will only get better. Langford is going to be one of those players that you don't really notice in a game, then look up his stats and he's had 30. Lindsay had a quiet game but has class and poise, and Colty's almost there. Just some skill errors at the wrong time, but he's in the right areas at important times. Think he's going to be a gem. And I've got some stats on the young guns. Harvey Langford, 25 disposals, 9 contested, 5 clearances, 5 scoring involvements, 4 inside 50s, 4 marks and 433 metres gained. It's pretty good. for a young kid. Caleb Windsor, 20 disposals, 5 intercept possessions, 5 inside 50s, 4 scoring involvements, and nearly 500 metres gained. He's had 499 metres gained and a beautiful goal on the run, which he definitely didn't run too far. He ran so far.
Almost did.
And Colton Tolstrup, the 14 disposals, 5 scoring involvements, and as you said, he did make the few errors. He's not far off, and I said before, he kicked 3 behinds. Easily could have been 2 or 3 goals. He kicks those goals and the game is a totally different game. Xavier Lindsay only had the 11 disposals this week, but he's just so clean with the ball in hand. I think he went at 90% disposal efficiency. It's a quiet game, but there's still a lot to like there, and the body of work this year has been great. So, B-Man, what do you think of this young brigade and how they're travelling?
They're all terrific, and they're all got sort of different attributes, I think. And I was really, really happy to see Windsor. He hasn't, I think he struggled a bit down back in that role, but it was great to see him get some genuine run and carry from the back half. I like his aggression, and he that was the thing that surprised me most about him playing last year, watching his footage in the lead up to the draft, was that I didn't sort of have it in my mind that he'd be so hard at it, but he doesn't mind niggle. I was really thrilled with his performance, and he's that run and carry is so important. What'd you say he had? 490 metres
499, 490, nearly 500 metres gained. And what I like of him, it's obviously a set play. When someone gets it in the middle of the ground, he runs off half back to get that handball received so he can deliver it into the forward line.
And to run around the back. And I mean, just on the it was interesting in the good, I meant to say one of the other good stats was that our disposal efficiency, our kicking efficiency in the first quarter was off the charts. We were going 80% by foot for that whole quarter, which is curious about our turnovers. So they probably came in the second quarter saying we didn't give up. We only gave up 1 goal, didn't we, in the first quarter, or was it less? So our kicking skills were good. In that third quarter, our long handballs were so noticeable, weren't they? The way they were looking to handball, if in any doubt, handball it forward, which is sort of a bit like a sort of 2025 version of kick it long, dump it long, and just handball long and get it forward. So at least the opposition can't intercept mark a handball, obviously. So Windsor I was thrilled with Windsor's performance. Lindsay, I've got so much time for him. He's got so much time with ball in hand. I just feel calm. A sense of calmness comes over me when he kicks. I just feel like he's just not going to miss targets. He slows down before he does it. Doesn't rush his disposals. He had a couple of great one-on-one defensive wins where he's really quite clever with the way he holds himself. He uses his that space on the left side as a lefty really well. In terms of Langford, I just think I'll be really interested in your interview with him. He's super competitive. He was in the grill of one of the players who ran through, maybe it was a player who clipped Vine, I can't remember, but he was quite aggressive. No, maybe it was Gibney he was into. One of the things I really like about him is that he looks slow, but he makes really quick decisions, and he makes good decisions. And he's a sort of player that looks a bit slow. Maybe that's just he's big and a bit lumbering. But he's obviously got great spatial awareness. Like, he'll kick a ball quickly. He doesn't get pinged. He seems to know, okay, I'm going to get rid of this now. So his sort of movements and stuff look, I don't know, languid's not quite the right word, but he makes good decisions and releases it. So many players get caught with it when they, and he's got that innate ability to know when he's about to get smashed and dispose of it. And he sort of makes good decisions with his kicking. Like, he often does chip kicks and does those kicks on an angle. Talked about Colt before. I think I just got a feeling he's got that X factor about him that, he could have a breakout game. And I think he's really important to the way we play. All 4 players, to me, it was they want them in the side. They want the energy. They're critical to the way that Goody wants to create this back half movement. They're really super important for that. And Colt, for instance, super important, just the way he leads up hard at the ball carrier. I think the key is to watch where Colt gets his disposals, and he gets a lot of them in the back half. I was thinking of you, George, watching Langford. It's curious the way they're using it. Lindsay's basically a winger half back, but they rotate. It's quite curious the way they mix up. and Langford was starting on the wing quite a number of times. So
yeah, they had to mix it up apparently because of losing Petty and then moving Turner down. Yeah, so I think they put Langford into the middle more than what they wanted to, and then Windsor had to play more back and wing, I think, than what they wanted to originally. So yeah, there were a lot of movements around, but Langford continues to really impress me. You talked about his innate ability. He's got the same vision that Pickett has.
yeah,
He knows where the ball is going before he gets it, and so when he delivers it, he might look slow in the sense, but he's already worked out where it's going, and he is a beautiful kick. The number of times he's for a kid who's 19, he's under extreme pressure, particularly when you're playing in the midfield or around the ground in the contested stuff. He hits his targets all the time. He is just amazing. He's at the same age, I think he's better than a couple of the other players, the Petrakas and the Olivers that we've got in the midfield. At the same age, I think he's got more upside particularly because of his kicking ability, but also that vision, that ability just to know where the ball's going to be and where it's going before I even get into this.
Yeah, I reckon that's so critical, and it's also he's got different types of kicking. He's got he can kick long when he hooks around on his left foot, but he also does, and I think maybe it's the younger players who have come up in junior footy playing in zones and having to kick over the top. He's got that ability to weight the ball into a spot where it goes sort of high, dinks it high, and uses it really well. Trying to remember who he kicked it to. He set up a pass. It was just a beautiful sort of lateral kick. And, that's what we've really lacked, those players who can kick on the angle and hit targets. But you're spot on, George. It's that's probably what it is. That sort of not so much fast thinking when he's got it. He's already thought about where it's going to go before he's got it. And so when it happens, it looks a little bit, I don't know, it doesn't look as smooth as, say, Lindsay. Lindsay looks like he's got time, and but it's right. That's a really good sort of way of thinking about it. He already knows where it's going to go. It's just a matter of executing it. I think, and he's such a big boy. He's a big lad, so he's going to get bigger and stronger. I haven't played him forward much yet, so I'll be curious to see whether that string comes to his bow at some stage. But I think they're the future. I'd add McVie into that. Like, he's a little bit older, but he's really critical. And I think the importance is those young players playing together and playing in the same team. This is really the second time that they've played in the same team. So I think, apart from anything else, they also, not so much Lindsay, I guess, because he looks already like an older player, but they bring an energy, don't they, and a spark. And it's really exciting. And I think he played his card early in the season, Goody, by debuting five new players, and obviously he wants to bring them in.
I'm not so worried about this young brigade in terms of our midfielders and those smaller, medium-sized players. It's our younger brigade of key position players in terms of when we're talking about the future. That's sort of if I have any concerns about us in 5 years' time, that's where it is at the moment. Also on here, 25 disposals, Langford, from 78% time on ground. And you have Rivers had the same amount with 83, and Petrarca had 4 more disposals with 83 minutes. When he starts playing, those bigger minutes, 85% of time on ground, watch out. We're going to see high numbers.
And once another couple of pre-seasons, he's going to be beast. He's going to be... like a big version of Bontempelli.
Mandalorian says, early in the 2023 season, Kate Chandler was winning praise for his career best form, regularly hitting the scoreboard as a dangerous small forward. In 2025, he's gone to another level in a new high half-forward role. This week, he racked up a career-high 26 disposals, and he's averaging 3 more touches per game than last year. With the loss of Nibbler, we've desperately needed someone to fill that high work rate two-way role, pushing hard defensively up the field and still being able to work back to provide that pressure in the forward half and also hit the scoreboard. I'm absolutely loving what 2025 Cade Chandler is bringing. And Supreme Demon asks, what are your thoughts on Cade Chandler's games? I thought Cade was excellent and really had an impact. He's playing consistent football. Spirit of Norm Smith says Cade's desire, run and carry and goal sense are fantastic. He's filled that high half forward role left by Nibbler and is in career best form. So Chandler, as I said, 26 disposals, 8 tackles, 7 score involvements, a goal. Should have had 2 or 3. I think he sprayed one completely and then also missed one that he probably should have gone. And he had 567 metres gained, easily the most improved player on our list this year, I think. Big-man, your thoughts on Chin's game and his year to date?
He's been our best player this season, just about in terms of consistency. I think probably him and Bowie, and he had a better game than Bowie. So I could not be more impressed with Cade Chandler. He was great last year, I thought. Like I said, I think we need 2 or 3 more of those sorts of high half forward, medium forward runners who can kick goals. They're so critical in footy to get up and down the ground. But he's our best at the moment. I talked about this 2 or 3 weeks ago, maybe 4 weeks ago, is that, there was talk at the time that it was a decision between him and Bedford, which to me now feels like a mistake. We should have kept them both because Bedford's we need 2 more Bedfords. But, there was a feeling there for a little while, I think, amongst Demon fans that if that was the case, I don't know if it's ever so, binary as that, but that we pulled the wrong rein. I don't think many people would think that now, that we pulled the wrong rein on Chandler over Bedford because his work rate's elite. He's generally kicking for goals, except for that one, which was real pretty because it was a beautiful bit of play that set that goal, that set that scoring opportunity up. Is elite. I think that the thing that I really like about him is his leadership. He doesn't leave anything out there, and he's you can just see live at the footy when you watch him a little bit how hard he works up and down the ground in contest, and he's got enough of the X factor to be able to kick goals. I know you like those small forwards kicking goals, Andy, and you would have been thrilled with that bit of play that he did. That goal he kicked was. Yeah. He said a lot about him because he worked hard, like the way he plays. He worked hard to get to that contest. He read the ball best. Then he used his skill to get, to jink and to get round 2 players tight on the boundary line. But the thing that really impressed me and showed me, not only has he got the sort of all the skills and the effort and the application, but he's also got a pretty high level skill set and footy IQ, was the way he finished that. He ran he slightly jinked out. He had to kick on his right foot. But there was a West Coast player on the line and he had to kick on the right foot above him. So he kicked high. That's a lot of computational power in a split second, isn't it? And it was really important timing of that goal. So, he's been fantastic this season. And I know that I was a bit confused this year about a leadership group I've heard or read, or we've got it like a micro leadership group and then a secondary one or some such. Yeah. Is he in the second one?
I'm not sure whether in any official titles, but I've unofficially heard that he is a real leader at the club and that he'll be in that leadership group, but I haven't seen anything official. They didn't have any of those pictures of, this is the leadership group this year. So I don't think anything's been announced. Officially, but I've heard unofficially he is a leader at the club.
And the comment about Nibbler's spot on. I mean, we've lost a lot with Nibbler's. Obviously his running power and his play, but it's his leadership, and you need those younger players stepping up. And in many ways, I've heard Chandler, Cade say this a couple of years ago. His role model was Nibbler, and so it shows, I guess, the legacy importance of having the Nibbler type of players who people see how hard they work, who maybe some might say that their skill sets are limited or whatever, but make every ounce of their potential, they wring it out through their hard work. And he saw that. And I think he's replicated that effort level. And him and Bowie have been our 2 most consistent players this season. And super important player to us, Kate.
It's interesting, isn't it? A couple of years ago, we had a presentation from a Melbourne assistant coach and he was talking about, I think it was James Harmes at the time, and Chandler's almost followed the same trajectory in the sense that good player, both good players, injury prone for the first couple of years, and he said you've got to wait till they hit 25, till they build the body that can actually withstand AFL football to be able to start to show their best. And that's where Cade is now. He's on the field. He's not being knocked around. He's not spending weeks and weeks off the field with various soft tissue injuries usually. And he's just at that absolute perfect point in his career now. So we should be seeing a lot more of Cade being as influential as what he was in this game.
I reckon that's a good point, George, too, and also their tank, because incrementally their tank, I think that's where Oliver's struggled. If they take a break, it's not like they can reset from where they were. It's like, snakes and ladders, and it takes each season incrementally that builds a little foundation to the next season to take them to another level. And his running power is pretty amazing, and you just look at him, he looks incredibly fit.
Red Jacket says, there's been some debate on the podcast about whether Jack Viney is playing a traditional tagging role, but regardless of the label, one thing's clear. After a quiet start to the season, Jack has turned back the clock over the past 3 weeks. He's been a relentless bull in the midfield, delivering some of his best footy. This is the exact response and leadership you want to see from your senior players. George, you made your position clear about tagging, so I won't get you to repeat it. Nevertheless, Jack has had a massive 3 weeks. It's great to see him bounce back after a bit of a slow start to the season. He wasn't the only one, that's for sure. How'd you see his game this week in the last couple of weeks?
Another fantastic gutsy effort from Jack. It's not the limitation on the other player. I mean, Harley Reid, quite honestly, hasn't played it well this season at all. There's all sorts of speculation about what's going on with Harley Reid, but more importantly, Jack Viney was playing Jack Viney at his best. It's 10 tackles, 18 disposals, just grunt work all the time. That's what we want out of Jack. He's amazing. His resilience in the game for the number of hits he takes, including the one he took in this game, the number of hits that he takes in a game, and he just gets up and keeps on going. Yeah. That's leadership by example, and it's exactly what we want out of Jack. He's changed the way he exits from the middle. He's starting to think more about his delivery into the forward line in particular. It used to just be get on the boot, bang, hope for the best, because he's not the best kick in the club by any stretch, but he seems to be more deliberate about what he's using, looking for other options rather than just getting it out there. But yeah, it's nice when you've got someone as tough. I think what was the description from Red Jacket, a relentless bull.
Yeah, relentless bull in the midfield.
That's a pretty good description.
Yeah,
as opposed to a relentless bullshitter, as I've been accused of. I think tagging or no tagging, we talked about this last week, I think, is give him a job. I reckon that's Goody said exactly that. He works well within a framework, and that's coincided with his best footy.
In his end years of his career, I think that's a good way to play him while he can still keep up, and he obviously can. Yeah,
I reckon. And it's interesting they say about that sort of, like, he's not the best kicker. It's and again, this is anecdotal. It might not be backed up by the data, but anecdotally, it feels like he's being used a lot more as the handball release player. And so he's getting the ball on the move and out a bit, like a bit more of an outside. Yes, he's an inside bull and he'll tackle hard, but he seems to get a lot of those wraparound quick handballs that release him, particularly out of the centre. And some of our centre work looked fantastic in this game, didn't it?
When it clicks, it really looks good.
Oh, well, one of the ones that Maxi set up, we got 2 goals within about a minute.
That deft handball
that Simpson noted to track.
Beautiful.
That handball, the next handball from memory, was to Viney, and that releasing into the forward line. And so, he's terrific, and he gave
when Viney has time and space, and you don't always get that in football, but if he gets that release, his disposal is actually pretty good if he's got time to think about it. And
he's just hasn't got depth on his kick, has he? He just hasn't got that. But speaking of Reed, he gave Reed a total lesson, and I like, you know,
we owed him.
If I was an Eagles fan, I'd be ropeable with it. Like, he looks totally not in AFL condition. Like,
he's been the same the whole season. He's been right out of it. And I see Matthew Lloyd made similar sort of comments today about
is that because
he needs to get out, and I think he probably wants to get out.
Well, I can't stand that. It just drives me nuts. Is like, get out on the high. Don't get out like Judd. You want to get out, go and play your very best footy. It's a bit like Horn Francis is to get out on your own terms. It just, his head's all over the place. But I love that Goodwin sent Viney to him.
And again on Reed, he's probably expected to do everything. Unfortunately for the whole, they are in such poor condition as a club with their players. You know, that they really don't have too many other players in that side that you'd be really pleased to have in your side.
Waterman. I'd take Waterman in a heartbeat.
In a second. I was thinking during the game. I said you could have been playing. I was thinking you could have been playing for us this.
But they're pretty slim pickings, and the rest of the side. It's a good reason why they're 8-0.
Yes. Okay. Travi14 says, what are your thoughts on our forward setup? I've never believed that Fritsch and Melksham work well together in the same forward line, and I still think that's true. While neither really deserves to be dropped based on earlier form, I think Fritsch should make way. I also think we need two tall targets. Playing just one makes us too predictable going forward. And Dark Horse adds, Fritter isn't doing enough off the ball. There were several moments where he could have laid a shepherd to help a teammate take a shot, but instead he peeled off, hoping for the handball receive. His habits haven't changed. Is the coaching group just letting it slide? If JVR has his touchback, he'd be a better inclusion, especially with our forward line lacking height. And he also, Dark Horse 72 also says, how important has Melksham become at receiving across the 50 and delivering with advantage to our forwards? D. Old Fart asks, with Petty out, do you think JVR or AJ comes in to replace him, or maybe both if Disco goes back? And Spirit of North Smith also asks, if Petty doesn't get up, who comes in? Is there a case for both JVR and AJ? Supreme Demon says, I was impressed with Disco Turner's 3-goal game. Should we persist with him up forward or shift him back to defence? So, Beardman, and it's another week, another forward line setup question. We get them every week. How'd you see
2 years.
So I got a couple of things here. How do you see the games of Fritter, Melksham, Turner? You've mentioned some of them already. And Turner once he moved forward. And I know we're not in the changes segment yet, but does JVR come back in this week if Petty is out with concussion, which I probably is?
Well, it's a bit of, it's that old question about what do we think Goody will do as opposed to what would I do if I was Goody.
Well, what would you do?
If I was Goody, Fritter wouldn't have been in the side 2 weeks ago. It's pretty hard to drop him now. Goody, one thing he's been consistent on, he doesn't like making changes to teams that win. Personally, I think if they're going to play Fritter, then that's where they play him. Like, they play him as a deep full forward whose job is to kick a couple of goals a game and take marks. You either could accept he's like, it seemed to me that he was dropped for lack of pressure. He hasn't put enough pressure on. I wouldn't have thought if that was the KPI. Like, they were playing him at sort of half forward flank, and ideally then he's kicking inside 50. It seems to me that position's a bust for him. So if he is going to play, it's in that role, which means that Jefferson doesn't play. Jefferson doesn't have a spot. That's his spot. So for me, it's Fritter or Jefferson. JVR, similar. JVR could go down there. So, if that's the only spot Fritter plays, that means that he limits JVR's potential to come back in the side, and definitely Jefferson. Or Jefferson's probably a couple of cabs behind, which is really unfortunate for him, seeing he was out because of injury. If I would have dropped Fritter 2 weeks ago, it's pretty tough to drop him now. He's kicked 2 goals in both of the last 2 matches, hasn't he?
Look, if he's kicking 2 goals, I'll have to take
You'd
that.
You'd be happy with him, yeah. So
I want him to kick 3 or 4.
Melksham, sorry, Andy, I think Melksham, he was terrific in this game.
If Melksham plays like that, taking those marks and quickly playing on and kicking to our advantage, and he's got a great kick usually inside 50.
Oh, his kick, that kick, go back and watch that kick on his left foot after he gets hemmed in and can't go with his first option, to kick on his left foot almost backwards, diagonally backwards to Pickett, who that must be a set play because he was running laterally. He couldn't have. It was brilliant vision. 2, to execute on his left foot. Yeah. His kicking is elite, and I think that it's it's so important in footy these days to have players who can regularly hit high-risk targets. He missed that kick to you remember, he kicked it on his left. If he misses that to Cos, puts it back in the corridor, that's where you get killed on turnovers from the back half. You miss that kick, you're basically inviting the opposition to take it end to end. So I thought he was fantastic. And as I said before, you need players who can go to the opposition's best intercepting defender.
Well, he's going to play.
I reckon Fritter can play that role. He's not disciplined to play enough of the intercepting.
Melksham will probably do that with Sicily this week.
Yeah, exactly. And so I mean, as for Turner, I said before, I think Goody likes the swingman. I like Turner up forward. I thought of the breakout. I like Petty up forward. They can basically wax, I think. It's really about whether they go with 2 talls. This week, as I said, I was really surprised that they didn't bring in JVR. Can you have JVR in the same team as AJ? Well, not with Fritter in the team, I don't reckon. So it's a bit of someone's got to come out of that mix. One thing I would say about that sort of not such a big forward line is that it helps with our challenge with our leg speed. I thought, our leg speed looked... maybe it was because Oliver, that was the other big out this week, wasn't it? Not having Clary, but he's not. We look quicker in the midfield without Clary, I have to say. Not a direct criticism on Clary, I suppose, but we did look a bit quicker in the midfield. Same deal for me with Fritchen. He's not a super quick player either, but Petty and Turner, I think, are pretty much the same sort of players. So you have one of them up forward. Can AJ play in the same side as at JVR? Only if Fritter comes out, I think.
I think the real concern for the forwards again this week, and we've talked about this for the last 2 years at least, is the conversion rates. That given the opportunities that we had in this game, against the bottom of the ladder side, who had lost their major backman in McGovern, it's hard firstly to say that we did really well in certain areas, given that there was virtually zero opposition in certain cases. So it's really hard to judge. But I'm still in the boat that Fritter needs to show a lot more, because JVR in particular will do a lot more in the forward line than what Fritter will. And I'd be having AJ in simply to put a second ruck into the side, if nothing else, or we finish up going back into the old JVR into the ruck story again. So I think there's more upside with an AJ and JVR combination than having Fritsch in there. Turner was fantastic, but I think he'll have to finish up in the back line again. He's a really we were really fortunate to have him in this game to kick the goals, because others were not really doing a great job of it, quite frankly.
And he took a nice contested mark, I thought. The Chandler, the one that he sort of set that goal up to Chandler. He pushed Allen fair square in the back, I thought.
And weren't the commentators filthy at that?
Yes, they're the West Coast fans. Commentators.
All right. Wells 11 writes, yes, we finally won a last quarter, but not convincingly. Are we just not fit enough, or are we carrying too many players who for various reasons aren't at full conditioning, like Colt returning from a long injury, first-year players like Lindsay and Langford, or Track and Clary coming from a long way back? At the heart of it, we are not... were we not trained properly in 2025, or are these setbacks just unavoidable? So, George, like the forward line, make these questions coming up every week, the last quarter fade-outs and fitness questions. We did finally win that last quarter, not convincingly. I don't think we can tell about the fitness regime.
Yeah. And again, given the opposition, it's really hard to draw any conclusions about that. This week's the concern for me wasn't so much that we won the last quarter, but we allowed them to kick 5 goals. They were pretty ordinary, which is the second week in a row where we've allowed the opposition in for whatever reason. It's put the queue in the rack, you might say, for last week. But West Coast are a pretty ordinary side, and we still allowed them to kick 5 goals in that last quarter. So we will get a really, really good indication against Hawthorn this week about whether we're fit or not. And
they will punish us for any mistakes.
Yeah. They are very, very good at that.
Yeah. And we'll talk more about that later. Big man, anything to add on fitness last quarter?
Just that the commentators were, again, we'll talk about them. There's a question about them. But I was saying training run in the last quarter, that was rubbish. I watched it and then I was watching it and I thought, hold on, that doesn't jar with what I've been watching. And so I was thinking, I'll be curious to see what the pressure stats were. And as I said, we were 191 in that quarter. It was our highest pressure rating of any of the quarters, which to me is a fitness thing, is that you can't apply pressure if you're running out of gas. So I think there were really positive signs in the last 2 weeks that we're running through the line much, much better. And you just look at Maxi. He played the last 40 minutes of the game, and so I think actually our fitness and conditioning is on the upswing. Their pressure was pretty good in the last. Yes, I agree that's part of the sort of challenge, is giving up 5 goals. It's also, though, I think it's important to note with that stuff is that's the challenge of implementing a new method. It's the sort of weak point that it's going to expose is a defensive system. So you can play aggressive coming forward. You're going to turn it over. You're exposing your backline, and even probably arguably the best sort of defence combination of ball movement is the Pies at the moment, and they got opened up exactly the same they gave up easy goals against the Cats. It's a bit, that we want. Fans want us to play fast. They want us to transition ball from the back half. You're going to give up goals the other way. It's just absolutely.
Let's get this. We've got a question right now about that defensive transition and ball movement. Dark Horse 72 asks, are we developing the ability to slingshot out of defence? The run and movement are there, and we're seeing handball chains building, but sometimes we move too slowly, resulting in contested entries. So, big man, how do you rate the ball movement this week? Are you seeing genuine improvement in that area, and what concerns, if any, are still lingering?
Well, as I said, so I think sometimes with that, that's a sort of useful things about data and stats to be able to marry up to what your feelings like, because that style of moving it too slowly, Melbourne have been criticised that for the last 2 or 3 years, but it doesn't hold true this year. As I said, we're the 4th best, maybe even more now. That was before this weekend. The 4th best team at moving the ball from the back half to the front half, and we're as quicker than we've ever been in the AFL under Goody. And I think this either the quickest or up in the top 3 from playing on. So we are simply not at the moment holding it up very often. So maybe it feels that way, a bit hungover from previous years, or that when you see it, that confirmation bias of go quick, we're a slow team. The data says, in fact, we're one of the quickest, if not the quickest team at releasing the ball or playing on from a mark or a free kick. That connects up with the handballs. We're using forward handballs and handball chains a lot more than other teams. We're trying to... Goody's been doing that. Remember I talked about it last year. We were trialling that in the preseason last year, those long forward handballs. Maybe it's one of those things that just takes time to get in place, but it's a really noticeable way, part of our method. And it was totally noticeable in that third quarter. And I think, as I said, it shouldn't lose sight of the fact that it was our highest scorer. I couldn't believe that stat. Highest scoring single quarter since the beginning of the 22 season. I wouldn't have guessed that 47 points is our highest score. When it works really well. It does expose our back half. That's my worry a little bit, is our sort of back half. It's great to have McVie back in. He's got good wheels. Good that he gets another game under his belt. They've had a lot of changes to the, in all fairness to the defence. Lever's come out. May's come out. May's come back in. Howes is out. Adams was in there for a little while. The only mainstay down there is Tommy Mack, isn't he? So all the while trying to implement a new defensive system that has to push back hard when the ball's turned over. So, I think it's looking good. I think that's what Goody's trying to implement. That's what he's up against. It's no small thing to introduce such a radically different way of playing. Still, as I've talked about, still at the heart of it is pressure and clearances. So, I think that, we're in good shape the way we're sort of trying to get to. I actually think the other thing that Goody has done is he uses that Brisbane method of controlling the ball with short kicks. So against the Suns, they really looked, the Lions really looked to control the tempo when, at different times in the game. And Goody's always liked doing that. I think playing with tempo and taking the sort of, what the opposition give us and playing around that. So as I said before, number 2 or 3 in the AFL for uncontested possessions, which is a totally non-Goody. 2 years ago, we would have been, probably 18th or 17th for that stat because we were long down the line, kick to a contest and win that contest. So it is quite a different method. I think they'd be pretty pleased with how it's looking. We've got to do what you said before and what George noted. I think the big challenge for us is taking advantage, increasing our, when we get an inside 50, how often we score percentage-wise. We're up around 50 in this match. I forget what the AFL average is, but if we can get it a tick over 50, our scores will go up by 5-10 points a game.
Red and Bluebeard says the Melksham incident and related commentary gave me the irrits. Melksham goes for the ball, uses his body, not his arms, and takes a mark. McGovern gets bumped out of the way and collides with Petty, who was dangerously pushed into the contest by Gibney. But the West Coast Parrots, who passed for commentators, reckon Melksham could be suspended. I was pleasantly surprised that Goody defended Melksham in the presser and stated that he thought it was a mark to Melksham and not even a free kick, and that the reason for the Petty's concussion needed to be equally scrutinised. What are your thoughts? And don't get me started on the high contact free and 50 to Viney, which led to a goal. Surely this is at least as worthy of discussion. But of course, it was a Melbourne player on the receiving end, so crickets. Spirit of Norm Smith says the Schofield commentary on Melksham was infuriating. I've seen guys get weeks for less. Totally overreach. The bias commentary in general was hard to take. I think it's unfortunate that for any interstate games that we're going to play that isn't the match of the day or night, especially the one that clashes with a top of the table match like the Geelong Collingwood game, we're going to get that biased commentary of whatever state we're playing in, and probably more so in Perth. And just in regards to the Melksham incident, which he did not thankfully get suspended for, the commentators really acted as judge, jury and executioner on the spot with that one. And conversely, when that first game of Pollack's Jack Viney, they made every excuse under the sun to give the young kid a pass, like by saying, oh, look how bad he feels, he didn't know what to do, he tried to pull out of it. Anyway, George, thoughts on the commentary in general for these interstate games and on Saturday night?
Can't add much more than that. It does infuriate me that it's not only Schofield when Eagles are playing. It's the same when you've got Hodge commentating on Hawthorn games and Richo against Richmond. But they deliberately do it. That they put these ex-players from these various clubs into the commentary position. It degrades it overall. So, but you're right. We're going to continue to get it. So, there's not much you can do about it, unfortunately, and it applies to all the clubs. It's not just Melbourne's games against West Coast. It's the same for every other club. It's pretty ordinary. The trouble when you've got those sort of commentary is that the AFL pick up on the comments around who hit who or who didn't hit who, and almost invariably you'll see the tribunal then start to take notice about particular incidents. And on the Monday, because it's overblown by a particular commentator or a commentary team, then something happens. So, just have to put up with it.
Infuriating is the right word. I mean, some of the stuff Schofield says is all right, but he's so sort of didactic about things, and so like I've seen weeks for that. He'll get weeks for that. It's like, what? Hold on, I couldn't even. He was so clear about it. Like he the other thing he didn't mention is, and in fact, I barely saw any commentary about this, is Gibney pushed Petty. Petty got pushed into McGovern. That's why Petty hit McGovern, or the two collided. Melksham marked the football. As Goody said, Goody was hilarious. He basically said, well, it was a mark. He should have been having a shot for goal, let alone getting reported. He hasn't been reported, though, has he?
No, did he get a fine?
I don't think he got anything.
I don't
think he even got, and so that's what infuriates me. Schofield immediately says he'll get weeks for that. Like, it's a black and work, done deal, didn't mention Gibney, it's like watching two different things, two different events. So, hold on, he marked the footy. What are you talking about? If he didn't mark the footy and pushed him under, sure, okay, no worries. But he did mark the footy. Should have been paid the mark, I thought. So, it was an unfortunate accident because Petty was injured in the same incident, I think. I'm pretty sure. Although it's not really clear how. But Gibney pushed Petty.
Yeah, but Petty also clashed heads with Gibney earlier in the game, and maybe the concussion was from that.
Yeah, delayed. I think there was some talk about them both being the same incident. But the other one was more annoying, I thought, the one with Viney, because like you said, they were sort of giving him excuses, but they also, I think it was Simpson was saying, you could see him literally make a decision about whether he's going to be able to get the ball. What the hell's he talking about? He swung after he made the mark.
That's right. He made the decision to hit. I know we feel bad for him. He's a first gamer, and
I didn't feel bad for him.
I'm just saying that's what happens.
That was unbelievable. I'm glad he got 50, but it's like, they even said it was a good thing it was Viney. I think the implication being because he's got a head like concrete. So if he'd been concussed, there's weeks. It's a mess, really, isn't it? Some of that stuff. So, Schofield is the other thing about Schofield is there's a clip that's fantastic. It's really awesome. It's on AFL.com. It's Schofield and one of the other commentators interviewing Track after the game in the change rooms, and it's about Clary. I think it's part of a longer interview, but the bit that's on the AFL.com is asking me about Clary and about him not playing this week because of his well-being, and Track gives a fantastic answer about the importance of men, showing their emotion and telling people when they need help, and framing it in that way and saying how great it was, and that the team will wrap their arms around them, and a really terrific and really important sort of messaging and a conversation starter by Track. And Schofield at the end of it says, but, which is like, yeah, that's great, but does that, I forget paraphrasing exactly what he says, but it's something like, but does that make it harder for the leadership group or some such? It was like, it's such a old school football boneheaded thing. I just thought, I'd already frustrated enough with him, and then just watched that clip and lost any respect for him whatsoever.
I'm gonna play that now. Hopefully there's no ads. I'm sure there will be. There is an ad, so I'll just talk through it. We're just about to see Track be interviewed by what's his name, Schofield,
and someone else,
Schofield, and somebody else. We've got about 2 seconds to go. And
obviously with Clary at home, I just want to give him a massive shout out. Obviously, it's incredible bravery and vulnerability to be able to kind of speak up and say that he's not all right. And we're wrapping our arms around him, and I think we've come a long way as men. I think it's incredible that he's been ability to own it and accept that he's not going well, and I think it's awesome.
What did he say specifically to the group?
Hasn't spoken to us at all yet, but we'll speak to him throughout the week. I've given him a call and text message, and send my best to him. But it's just, I think as males, we sometimes get ridiculed or killed or I guess shut down for showing our emotion or expressing our frustration or emotion. And I think for him, the ability to show bravery and vulnerability in a time is really good.
So is that on you guys, the leadership group, to then? I agree with you, mate, around vulnerability and especially in men, but for a leadership group in a footy club, is that different for you? Going, okay, boys, this is what the situation is. This is how we're going to deal with it, and here's the footy. We're going to focus on that. Is that on you as a leadership group?
Definitely. I think in these situations, your health always comes first. That's your number one priority, and footy's always second or third, behind family and friends. And I think for him to be able to do that and us to kind of come over here, send our love, send our regards, and then, we've got obviously a job to do, but I thought the footy club did a great job of letting us know, and obviously as well, not letting it distract us.
There you go.
Good on Track. It's good to see Track doing some media and not leaving it to Maxi.
Yeah. Players have to step up, take the load off Maxi. Well, that's it for our questions. There was no Casey game this week for our seconds players to show their wares. JVR obviously wasn't able to capitalise on the 5 goals from the week before, but with Harrison Petty likely to be sidelined with concussion, he may get a recall. Jake Lever, the only other one on the injury list, but he's still about a month away. And before I get your changes, we've got got a call from Roaster. He talks a bit about the game, and then he asked the question that I'm going to be asking you guys in a second. So here we go, Roaster. Oh.
G'day, Demon Landers. Ro here again, Roaster. And yeah, off the back of another win, it was a scrappy game. I think the lead up to the game, we all kind of knew that. We knew it wasn't going to be pretty. I think, West Coast set themselves to make it a pretty dour defensive contest, and that's what it was. Good to see we managed to get away in the third term, and I guess it was a pretty even final term. I did say on the telecast it was the first final term we'd won for the year. So yeah, you want to probably keep that record going. But yeah, to win the clearance battle like we did, and so convincingly, and not put it on the scoreboard, that's probably what's most disappointing. But I think, I'm happy with the 4 points, and we move on. We come back to Victoria, gear up for the big week ahead. I think am I putting us in as favourites against Hawks? No, I don't think so. But we have a chance. They haven't been in great form the last sort of 3 or 4 weeks, or 2 or 3 weeks, and I think we've got a chance. So call me delusional. Maybe I've found a cure for the MSCSS, Andy, or maybe it's just, I'm in remission and it's about to come back up and flare up again as it usually does.
Talk to me in a
But
week.
anyway, boys, really look forward to the pod. Hopefully Melky doesn't get any weeks. I'd like to see him get off for that. It wasn't a push, so we'll wait and see. But who do you think comes in and who do you think goes out? I know you'll cover that, but interested to hear your thoughts. Thanks, boys. We'll look forward to the pod. As always, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Roaster. It's funny, we someone else had left a message, but I haven't listened to it yet. Do I dare go in blind to a message? Let's do it. Let's throw caution to the wind. I don't know who it is. All right, here goes. This could be dangerous. Oh, should press play.
Hi, fellas. Palace D's here.
Palace D's.
Love the job you do, and like many, I never miss an episode. AFL 360, the only other footy show I listen to or watch regularly, but yours is the only one that I never fast forward. I promised myself I wouldn't raise this topic again, as I believe I've made my point. But once again, our last quarter was a concern. Yes, it looked a lot better on the scoreboard, but they're sitting on the bottom of the ladder, winless. Of 32 quarters that West Coast have played this year, see if you can guess in which one they've kicked the highest score.
This one.
You got it. Make no mistake, it remains a huge problem and fodder for every opposition coach playing against us. Anyway, thanks for all you do for us supporters with this podcast and Demilan in general. Cheers, fellas.
All right, Palace D's, you can rewind to what the boys said a couple of 20 minutes ago, 15 minutes ago. Yep.
And before you go into the chain, Roadstar, they're 390 as it stands, which is pretty long for 390 for us to win against the Hawks, where they're $1.26 favourites, which is winks-like.
Yeah, I'd put all your money on that. Okay. Well, big man, followed by George.
Changes. Well, I would bring in JVR and I would drop
Petty's out. Petty's out.
Petty's out.
Say. They haven't said it, but I would assume if he went off concussion protocols, he's out.
Yeah. He has to be out 10 days, doesn't he? So that's a real blow. He's been consistent this year. Though, yeah, so, I mean, it does provide that opportunity for them to bring JVR back in, doesn't it? Mm. So JVR is in our best 22. I understand dropping him. I think that works for his development. He's only a kid. He's 21, maybe 22, JVR. I guess I'd really hope that sooner rather than later JVR's back in the seniors playing good footy because he's a gun. It's never linear development, but particular for the big fellas. You look at Cadman, still drifts in and out of games, and he was a number 1 draft pick, yet to really take hold of a game, Cadman. It happens for all young players, particularly those talls. But I'd be bringing him back in. I mean, it'll be interesting this week. I think Melksham, he'll stay in for sure, and as you say, he'll go to Sicily. I think Sharp is working really well as a sub, so I think he's done his job. He's sort of makes sense to have a player with his running capacity coming on. I think George noted that a few weeks ago when he wasn't subbed, to have him to be able to inject into the game in the sort of halfway through the third quarter and at the end and bring his running power and his leg speed. Nice goal he kicked in the game.
Yeah, nice.
So could it be as simple as JVR comes in for Petty?
That's what it seems like. I mean, I don't think there's anyone banging the door down to get in.
Well, no door to bang down if they VFL. Surely the AFL can put a man on the moon, and they still can't run a VFL season that complements the AFL season. It's ridiculous.
George, any changes from your end?
Petty out is a certainty, and JVR equally is a certainty to come in. So it's straightforward as you can be. I would also bring AJ in.
They won't.
Instead of Freda, but that's me. Yeah. I think AJ provides more options than Freda and gives us another backup ruck. We just can't keep doing this to Max.
You could bring AJ in. I mean, JVR comes in, he can swap directly for where Freda's playing now. And then AJ could come in for Petty and play that sort of roving centre half forward and give the ruck out. This game will be really interesting in terms of selections because you think that they won't be playing Ducks and Drakes, will they? They want the best team that they can get in. So it'll be interesting if they, if that's true, that whether how close this is to what Goody's thinking is our best 23 is. But
the other one that we've all forgotten about is Clayton Oliver.
Yeah, well, of course. So do you have any intel on that, Andy?
No. And even if I did have intel, I probably wouldn't say anything.
Well, not so much intel.
I don't have
what's
intel.
going on for him. More about whether he's coming back or
no. But I get the impression. I don't know. It depends what he's going through.
Yeah.
How bad it is. It doesn't just like that.
Well, let's say he comes back in. Who does he comes out? Maybe is that bounce?
Interesting.
Bounce
sharp out. And I mean, I hate to say, maybe I just can't see Colt. But I mean, his performances haven't been that fantastic. But yeah, maybe Colt to the bench and Sharp out.
Yeah, look, it all depends on whether you believe some of those guys in the media who think they've got intel and all that, the McCluers and Morris and.
But none of that goes to whether he plays this week. So if he needed a spell and, so.
Yeah, don't know. Don't have any intel there. And, it's, watch this space. The Demons return to the MCG off the back of a hat-trick of wins for one of their biggest tests of the season when they come up against the high-flying Hawks. The Hawks nest comfortably in the top 4, and the Demons will be looking to take a scalp on their way to their 4th consecutive win. Wouldn't that be great? George, followed by Bimman, give us your preview of this game.
I think this game will give us a very good indication of where we stand in the pecking order, so to speak. Hawthorn are definitely, they're sitting, third on the ladder at the moment. Yeah. They're playing some really seriously good football at the moment. They do depend on a lot of enthusiasm. If you get on top of them early, you've got a chance. But if they get a sniff, if people like Watson and Moore and a lot of their younger players that they've got, if they get on top, you won't stop them. They run furiously, but more importantly, they move the ball by foot really, really well. They've got, they progress up the ground by hard running up forward of the ball and then kicking rather than handball and trying to move it that way. So yeah, they're a real challenge to us. Sicily down back is really strange at the moment. He's doing some really weird stuff which causes some ridiculous turnovers. But in this game, the last game they played against Richmond, I watched the first quarter. They were pretty damn impressive, and they got out to I think it was a 79-point lead at one stage, and then quite literally they gave them the last couple of goals to get it back, but they still absolutely, utterly demolished Richmond across the whole ground.
You know what I don't want to see? If we're not going to win, I don't want us to get beaten by 70 points. I don't want us. There's been a few results this year in different games where there's been 70 points. I don't want to be one of those. But obviously I want to win, be man.
Yeah, it sets up to be really fascinating because, like I've been saying, is we are moving to that transition model, as I've noted. We're one of the best ball movement teams in the AFL. We're not converting that into the sort of scores that we'd like. Though having said that, we've been up around 100 now. Was that our highest score for the season just gone? 108, so it was 108 or whatever. So
we score more in the Freo game anyway. Yep.
So the 100 is the benchmark. We didn't quite get there that last week, did we? But the previous week and this week we've done that. So it presents a really big challenge because we want to play fast and we want to move the ball fast. I noted that we're one of the fastest play-on teams in the AFL. They like to move the ball fast through their kicking and handballing. Are we prepared to get into a slingshot game with them? That's going to certainly expose our defense to their ball movement. It'll be interesting to see how they use Viney, for instance. Let's say they do use him as a defensive mid. Any thought, George, who we might go to?
Newcomb,
yeah. Certainly in terms of influence, Newcomb.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the interesting things looking at the Hawks' numbers that really surprised me is, unsurprisingly, they're third in effective disposals per game. It speaks to George's point about their kicking skills. Fifth in uncontested possessions per game, remembering though we were third in that count. And that speaks to that chipping it around style that we like to do as well, and until you can get a clear path forward and then going quickly. And that's what Hawks do really, really well, is that they chip it around until they can go. And when they do go, they go really fast. And as George said, run ahead of the ball. And so that speaks to their third in metres gained per game. That really speaks to that method from the back half with handball and moving it quickly. Third in score involvements per game. Again, that speaks to the way that they play. But they're second in centre clearances per game, so that'll give us a real challenge. Obviously, their midfield system is working really well, but this one really surprised me. I'm not sure if it surprised both of you guys, but they're third in contested marks per game, which completely sort of surprises me, and first in marks inside 50 per game. Less so because that's more about their uncontested marks, and that's more about if you get it quickly and beat the zone back, you're getting one-on-ones or loose players and forward, and a lot of their players gamble and run ahead of the ball. So it'll. I think it's in some respects teams have worked out the Hawks to deny them that sort of outside run. I think it'll come down to all of the big matches that we'll play and through the season other teams will play is pressure. If we can beat them on that pressure scale, I know I've been talking about it. We went down by 9 this week, but it sort of probably speaks to West Coast weaknesses as much as anything. We're not going to lose many matches if we beat the opposition in pressure, and that includes this week. So if we can really pressure those outside players, I worry about our ability to defend their small, medium forwards. I always forget I don't know why I can never remember his name.
Watson?
No, not Watson. He's another. No, the fellow who plays a bit back and goes forward and.
Are you thinking of Bruce or
not Bruce? No, he's like a second, third year player. I'll think of it in a sec. But
Weddle is
he's another good
back
one.
going forward.
He's got
Moore is another one.
Moore, who I'm thinking of. He's the sort of player that he's really important to them, uses the ball well. He's exactly the prototype player that when I think of those medium small forwards, Bailey's for Lions is one to come to mind, but Moore is the other one. Strong overhead for his height. Tough one-on-one, tackles inside 50, wins the ground balls inside 50s and post-clearance possessions. I still think we've got a defensive weakness against those sorts of players, and I often think that AMW will prove to be a much bigger loss for us this year than, perhaps people might have thought, given he's, only played a handful of senior games. So, it does worry me. It's good to see McVee getting back into some form. He's a really important player for us. But Bowie's not. He's pushing up the ground, so we don't want him really matching up against them all. We want him to be able to run and carry and, do damage from the back half. So, that's an area I think that they've got an advantage in. As you say, Watson, McGinnivan's back in the side, isn't he? I can't imagine he'll come out. So they've got those, and then you do have the players like Bruce who take their chances and
Gunston.
And Gunston. So, I think a bit will depend on our ability to win the ground ball inside their 50.
All right. We'll see this time next week.
And there's one big advantage we've got. It's going to be a red Sharon. We do not lose many games with red Sharon. Statistics show, I'll have to make that number up, but I think we win often. What's the weather, Andy?
I'm just looking at the app now, and all I can see is from Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, all sunshine.
Sunny.
20 degrees and sunny on. That's perfect. Lovely day out of the footy. 20 degrees. Beautiful.
Sunny.
Not quite shorts.
Much wind, MCG, 1 o'clock. Perfect. And what sort of crowd is it? Big crowd? What are we hoping for?
Well, the Hawks they'll come. It's their away game, but you would think they would still come. We've had 3 wins in a row. You think we'd get out there on the Saturday?
They're a lot of theatre goers, the Hawks fans. They're a lot of
they're hopeful at the moment.
Yeah, an easy scalp. So 390 is the odds. I'm actually last week was the first time for the whole season that I was confident of a win. So I'm very glad my confidence was borne out. I'm actually relatively confident about this game as well. And I just on a betting thing, I'm banned from betting on Melbourne, but 390 is way over. I think we're in better shape than that looks. And I personally think the Hawks are a bit overrated. They haven't actually, yes, they're third on the ladder, but I don't think they've played that many teams in the top 8. And so they've had a pretty easy draw thus far. I reckon they're a touch overrated. So I'm actually pretty confident of this game, and I think that if we hit the contest and bring the pressure, we're a good chance of winning.
Just want to have a quick look who the Hawks have played. Oh, no.
For 4 in a row. And I think I'm right in saying this is the first time we've won 3 in a row since beginning of 23. Does that sound right?
Yes. No, it was the big. Yeah. No. Last year, did we win?
Beginning of 24, maybe.
Yeah, we might.
Start of 24.
It was like round 2 to after the Sydney game. We won 3, I think. So they beat Sydney in round 1. They've beaten
who are the same number of points as us.
Essendon, which
Hey, boo.
They've beaten. I know they beat Carlton, but who they play?
Well, anyone can
they
beat Carlton.
They beat Carlton, by 20 points. They have beaten GWS, so they had a 12-point win over GWS.
But was that in Tassie?
That was that game where GWS kicked the first 5-7 in the first quarter, and they didn't kick it. Yeah, it was like there were a few goalless quarters for either team. So
and where are they on the ladder? They're not in the 8 either, are they, Giants?
Giants now are just on 8th. They then played a Geelong. Oh, no, I missed one. Port Adelaide. They lost to Port.
Got thumped by Port Adelaide.
Yep. And they lost to Geelong on Easter Monday, and then beat West Coast, and then beat Richmond. So
that's right. So
playing the three bottom teams in a row.
One team in the 8, and that's the Giants who are down the bottom.
GWS, that's the team
who are 8th or something.
Yeah. So there you go. We're going to win by 70 points. Fantastic.
Yeah. So I won't be shocked if we win. I reckon 390s is way over. So don't put your house on it. But
I will not bet.
I won't bet.
All right. Well, that's where we're going to leave it for tonight. We'll be back next week to break down that game against Hawthorn. If you want to listen to the show live as it happens, head on over to demonland.com on Monday night at 8 p.m. Thank you to our 5-star reviewer on Apple Podcasts. That was Lost in Manila. And thank you to our voicemailers, Rostar and Palace D's. Late one came in at 5 o'clock this evening. As always, your questions and comments are an integral part of the show. So thank you to the Demonland posters who submitted those questions and comments. Thank you to Dutch Demons, Lazy, Supreme Demon, Spirit of Norm Smith, Travi14, Mandy Lorian, Red Jacket, Dark Horse, 72, D Old Fart, Wells 11, Red and Bluebeard, What Say What, Buck Naked, D Rev and Bay Riffin. Thank you to my co-hosts George and B-Man, and thank you to you, our loyal listeners. Don't forget, leave us a 5-star review and a comment on Apple Podcast, and we'll read it out and give you that shout out on the next show. Go Demons.
Go Red Leggers.